Hey everybody, hope you're having a fantastic day. This is Colin with Colin Talks Crypto, bringing you all the latest news with EOS. And I have a lot of updates for you today, a lot of news, a lot of new things, a special on all the games that are happening in the EOS ecosystem. And so I think with all of those things, it's only fitting that this is EOS Mega Update Volume 5. I like doing that. All right, let's get right into it. So first off, we have this tweet from Brendan Bloomer, and he says, Block.one does not plan to vote until it represents a minority of total voting turnout. We are more focused on updates the EOS community can leverage to increase voter participation. So that's an interesting tweet. As we all know, Block.one has 10% of all the EOS tokens, and while they get them over a 10-year period, they get 10% per year. They do have the voting rights and the capability of exercising their votes from day one with the full 10%, the full 100 million tokens. And so it's interesting. My opinion on this tweet is two things. First of all, if you have the ability to vote, you might as well just do it, because what's the logic? What's the reason that he might be saying this? I mean, the only thing I can think of is that he's trying to say, you know, we don't want to overly centralize the voting of EOS, and we know that we have the ability to do so. Therefore, we're going to wait. And so, being the good guys that we are, we're going to hold off and wait for the community to have more total voting turnout so that our vote isn't so heavy. And that's very nice of them. But I think if they can do it, they just should, because whether they wait or not doesn't change the fact that they can. And so it's kind of like pretending like they don't have the control that they do just by the fact that they chose not to enact that control. Now, on the other hand, I think it is very smart to wait just to let the blockchain mature. I mean, we are so early days that there does need to be better tools for voter turnout, and we do need to give the users a chance to all get involved and to make it easier to get involved. And so I think it is reasonable to get the tools out there and to allow full community voter participation before Block.one jumps in there. So I can see it from both angles. On one hand, it doesn't change anything. It doesn't change the fact that they can. On the other hand, we do have a brand new system here, and let's mature it a little bit before we just go jumping in with a huge single voter. Okay, and moving on to RAM. So the story of RAM continues, the saga continues. So here we have EOS New York's website, EOSRP.io, and this is the resource planner. It shows the current RAM price, which is currently $1.45 per kilobyte. And on this site, as well as EOS.feexplorer.io, they both show the increase of RAM. So there was an increase of RAM recently from the 64 gigabytes that the blockchain launched with, and there was a vote. And it took 15 block producers to agree to incorporate the increase of RAM. And just a few days ago, it passed. And there was a jump right away of 1.5 gigabytes. And I'm not exactly sure why that happened. Maybe that was just a catch up on the lost time, because the RAM increase happens on a per block basis. So it's a very, very gradual, in fact, the most gradual increase of RAM you could have per block. It's not added per day or per year. It's added on a per block basis, which is great for smoothing out the market and predictability and all of that. So on this website here, you'll see this is the overall view. This is the entire lifespan of EOS's RAM trading fees. And you'll see we had this huge spike in the beginning of July, and that was when the RAM speculators were taking advantage of the RAM market, and the price went way up. And then it's been correcting ever since. And then when the word got out that there was a plan put in place to gradually increase the RAM, it started declining. And then just a few days ago, it got enabled and the RAM increased. And so now we're at really the lowest we've been at since the beginning of July. And one thing I found really interesting is when I was looking at this site, I noticed over here on the right, it says overall RAM. And it says that we're currently using 46.29 gigs of 65.9 gigs of total RAM on the EOS network. Now, before the increase happened, we had exactly 64 gigabytes here. So it went up. It's actually 1.9 gigs higher than it was. And if you'll notice, it just changed. This number here, we'll watch it for a minute here. Every so often, every minute or two, this number will update. And it's showing the real-time total RAM. There, just did it. Total RAM on the network. And it goes up by just a little bit at a time because it's doing it per block. But I just think that's cool. So it's gradually eking in additional RAM to the supply. Very cool to watch it. This site shows it the best because there's like 15 decimal points of data accuracy here. And on this site, they actually show it on New York's site as well. It says total RAM available 65.91. But if you want the detailed view, just go to eos.feexplorer.io. You'll get this totally detailed update of how much RAM is current. And just for fun, to illustrate how fast the RAM is increasing, I sat here and watched it for about 5 or 10 minutes, and I made some notes. And so you'll see here at 9:24 a.m., we had 65.8961 gigabytes of RAM. And then 2 minutes later, we had 65.8962, 65.8964 at 9:28 a.m., 65.8966 at 9:30 a.m. So you can see that the RAM is increasing in this decimal point every couple of minutes. So we'll be, at 66 in no time, probably in a couple days. I'm sure many of you have heard of Bitfinex. I'm sure many of you have used Bitfinex. And they've announced a long time ago that they're going to create what's called EOSfinex, which is essentially an exchange, a decentralized, trustless exchange on-chain built using the EOS blockchain. And so here's a little description. What is EOSfinex? This platform aims to create a high-performance exchange that combines the speed and scalability of EOS IO software with Bitfinex's industry-leading experience. It'll offer fast, transparent, and trustless digital asset transactions. Ultimately, a decentralized exchange backed by Bitfinex and EOS IO is a big deal for the crypto community. And I agree completely. This is huge news. We need a decentralized exchange. We need a place where it can't be a point of failure due to government regulations or control. And so Bitfinex is going to be building that. And so we had an update on that. This is Paolo Arduano. I'm not sure if I said his name right. He's the CTO at Bitfinex. And he just tweeted, "We'll release more and more previews in the coming weeks. ETA for full version, 50 days. So that puts us about mid-September. I mean, we all know how software development goes. It usually takes twice as long as it's stated to. But if they're on target, we will have a full version in mid-September of a decentralized EOS-based exchange. This is really an example of one of the huge dApps, these larger dApps that are coming and being built and moving onto the EOS blockchain because of its capability. Because you couldn't have a decentralized exchange operate efficiently. There are a few decentralized exchanges out there, but they're so painfully slow because everything's on chain. And since everything's on chain, you require block confirmations for actions to be taken. Even if it's just one block to do a trade, you still have to wait that 30 seconds or that 10 minutes, depending on whether it was a Ethereum or a Bitcoin transaction. And so finally, at last, with EOS, you have the ability to do something as fast as a decentralized real-time exchange because you have 0.5 second blocks and things won't take forever. When you click a button, you'll have an almost instantaneous result. And so this is going to be really great. And another benefit of a decentralized exchange is that the government can't come in and say, hey, give us a list of all your highest trading volume users, or worse yet, give us a list of all your users with their logins, their full names, first names, last names, addresses, how much they've traded, how much they've sold, and give that to us. Otherwise, you're in trouble. And we've seen things like this with Coinbase and the government demanding a certain amount of information. And then after debating, they, reduced it down to less harmful amounts of information. Only a certain percentage of the users were affected. But really, I don't consider that a win at all. I consider that quite a big loss in freedom. And so that kind of set a precedent that they can get certain amounts of information from cryptocurrency exchanges. So I'm very excited to see a decentralized exchange which is completely incapable of being ordered to do anything. And I think that'll be really the start of a great new era of decentralized exchanges. So let's get this EOSfinex up and running. Okay, guys, and moving on, I thought, you know what, let's have a crash course in how CPU staking works on EOS. And there's this great post and a really great answer that clarifies this. So the title is, can someone properly explain to me how CPU staking works? The guy says, I have 2 accounts. I made about 15 transactions a day on my first account. I haven't made a single transaction in 2 weeks on my second account. And recently I got an over CPU usage error for my first account from Scatter. And then so he went into his second account and staked some EOS so that he could continue to make transactions. But after one single transaction, he saw another error message. And the error message said 90% of his CPU was utilized, but he only made 1 transaction. So why is it that he could make 15 transactions a day on his first account and then only 1 transaction on his second account, and they both maxed out? And this guy named James Pick answered, and it's a really good answer. So I'm just going to read this to you guys. CPU is elastic in EOS. The amount of CPU time that staking 1 EOS gets you is determined by the network conditions. The EOS mainnet launch group, mainnet, is currently configured to target 20 milliseconds of CPU time per block on average, with an absolute maximum of 200 milliseconds in any given block. Keep in mind that 500 milliseconds would be the actual block times, so 200 milliseconds is about 40% of that. If the rolling average is above 20 milliseconds, the amount of CPU everyone gets for 1 EOS is reduced. If it's below, then the CPU everyone gets for 1 EOS is increased. For a practical worked example, this means that if someone is spamming the network as hard as they can and they have 100 EOS staked and you have 1 EOS staked, then CPU allocation will adjust until the spammer is using CPU at the target rate, so your EOS will let you use 1% of that amount. The other thing that's interesting is that unlike RAM, the accounting for CPU isn't strict. The block producer that adds your transaction to the chain measures how long the transaction takes to execute in microseconds on their hardware, which may be faster or slower than other BPs, and deducts your balance accordingly. A different block producer might have billed you a different amount. In principle, they could choose to weight some transactions higher or lower, but there's no evidence they are doing this. Really awesome explanation of how this works. So it's an elastic capacity of processing, a little different than how RAM works. I also find it interesting that it's based on how long it takes for the transaction to execute on that block producer's hardware, which actually leads me to believe that this is a good thing because it will incentivize the hardware to be faster and for block producers that can execute transactions more quickly to be voted more highly, because who would want to vote in a block producer that charges a user more for the same transaction time, processing time, than another block producer? It would merely show that that block producer's hardware is insufficient, or it's older, or it's slower and not able to keep up as much. So we're going to have, I think in that sense, a free market of the most up-to-date and fastest hardware on block producers, because the voters are going to ensure that's the case. So I wanted to take a little bit of time and talk about EOS accounts and account permissions. So I'm dabbling in this a little bit and getting my feet wet and learning that EOS is quite different when it comes to accounts than other blockchains. And you know, you're familiar with Bitcoin and Ethereum, where you have a private key and you have a public address, and you have those 2 things. It's very simple in a way because you just have 2 keys. Well, with EOS, it's different. You have an account name, and you can only send EOS to another account name, which is 12 characters or less. And that's very user-friendly. It's better than that 40-character string of gobbledygook random characters that you get on all the other blockchains. And Dan made it that way intentionally to make it more user-friendly, which I think is genius. So you have that user-friendly 12-character or less account name. Now, behind that account name, it is linked to various private keys and public keys, not necessarily even just one private key or a public key. So every EOS account is going to have an owner key, and that is the master key. That is the highest permissioned access point for that account. And many EOS accounts will have also an active key, which has slightly less permissions. It's really just like having logins on a computer with different permission levels, and the owner key can change everything. And the active key, for example, can trade, it could send funds, but it can't change any permissions about the owner key. And in fact, if the active key was stolen or compromised, you could use the owner key as a separate key to then prove that you owned the account and to change the active key or to terminate it or to reassign it. You can actually have many account accesses. For example, if you wanted to, you could actually, using your owner key, create a RAM trading key only. So it would be a key pair, and there will be a private key and a public key, and it will be only given permission and access to trade RAM on the EOS network. You could do that because it's so highly programmable and customizable. So it took me a little bit of time to wrap my head around this, coming from the older blockchain space where you have a simple key pair. You never have more than one key pair, because if you did, you'd have a new account. Well, it's not like that on EOS, and you can actually have your one account name. Maybe it's Bob Loves EOS. That's your account name. And then you can have 3 key pairs behind that, each with different levels of access and permissions to do different things on the EOS network. And so that actually offers a really high level of security, but it also complicates it more so because it's a little trickier to get used to that at first and to have to set up all the different accounts. But I think in the end, it'll be a very good thing, because then you could keep your owner key in your most sacred location, in a vault, in a safety deposit box, under your mattress, in your mom's underwear drawer. You know, you can put that key wherever no one will ever want to look. And then you can use your active key to trade with. So you can actually have multi-dimensional levels of security. And you could even create key pairs under that account name that you require M of N as a multi-sig, so that they have to sign that transaction. 2 out of 3 of those people have to sign it to then move the funds. It's highly programmable and can be made very complex, but it also can be made very simple. And also I wanted to share that I did learn, because I was confused about this at first when I was trying to set up a scatter wallet. I thought I had to have both an owner key and an active key, and you do not need to have both of those keys. You can use the owner key for both, because I didn't have an active key coming from the EOS Genesis snapshot. We didn't create 2 different key pairs. If you remember, we linked it when we registered. We just linked up to one key pair. We had a private key that we kept private, and we linked our public EOS key to our Ethereum key. And so we never got a chance to make an active and an owner account. And so basically you just have that one, and don't worry, you just have that owner key. And if you want to, you can then go in using that owner key. You can then create an active key pair with lesser privileges so that you can have 2. So anyways, that had confused me at first. I had to wrap my head around how that all works. And so I found this post that also explains more. The active key has permission to stake or unstake coins, transfer coins, buy or sell RAM, upload smart contracts, etc. The owner key has permission to those same things, plus the permission to change permissions to your account. So using the owner key, you could inactivate your active key by removing its permissions, or add new keys with different permissions. He says, remember that the accounts created in the Genesis snapshot all have a single key pair for both the owner and active permissions. If you want to use this strategy, you first have to change the owner key to a newly generated key. Okay, and now let us move on to the games section of this video, because we have a lot of games coming out on EOS. It's only been 2 months, just under 2 months, and already I have like 6 games I'm going to show you that have come out on EOS. And I do not remember this happening on Ethereum when it launched. I don't remember all these games coming out within the first 2 months. I think it took a long time, and in fact, I'm still not aware if there's that many games on Ethereum. And I just wanted to start off by saying that I am not affiliated with any of these games. I have not been paid to show any of these games. I have not reviewed any of their code. I have not looked at their smart contracts. I cannot state that they're bug-free. There could be everything from malicious code to accidental bugs to future loss of funds. So try at your own risk. I just wanted to put that disclaimer there. I am not promoting these as something you should put your money into, but I am going to show you what's being created because I think it's very cool. So without further ado, let's go to the first game here. So we have PumpDump Wars, the first crypto combat game powered by EOS. And there's this amazing piece of artwork here. We have Dan Larimer swinging a crypto kitty at Vitalik, who's holding a sharding shield. And also you'll notice that Vitalik is holding a memory sword, swinging that back at Dan. So it's a battle of sharding and RAM and crypto kitties and who can scale the fastest. And there's some kind of weird looking hamster over here, and there's a Dogecoin dog going in the rocket to the moon over in the background. Amazing artwork. I think that would just make an awesome desktop wallpaper. But supposedly this is actually a game. So I don't know if this game's actually going to exist or not, but it says it is. It says coming soon, and there's a play button that's grayed out. And it says about the game. A long time ago, at the PumpDump galaxy far, far away, hamsters people, that must be these people in the background here, lived in peace and prosperity. They enjoyed unlimited wealth and happiness. However, evil powers of Scamersons brought to life dark demon of sect. His destructive powers put at risk PumpDump's existence and balance between good and evil. Destructive and exhausting battles are coming. PumpDump must tame demon and free brave and strong PumpDump people. That's a hell of a tongue twister to read that. To be continued. And you can follow them on their Telegram channels here. So I hope it exists because it sounds pretty badass. Wait for PumpDump Wars, the first crypto combat game powered by EOS. Awesome artwork. All right, and moving on to the next game. So we have EOS Authorities, Space Invaders. And if you remember, this game did exist on the testnet, and they've migrated it over to the mainnet. And now you can play it there too. You just click on this, and basically you see the top accounts, which is recorded in the blockchain now, and it shows how many moves they've used. So the number one player has used 131 moves with a score of 7,200, and it shows your account name. So if you want to... So basically you type in your EOS account name and you can show your resources for that account name. Oh, and it's letting us play. I'm not sure how it's letting us play, but let's do it. So you use A and D to go left and right. All right, here we go. So I'm just pressing A and D to move left and right. It's shooting automatically. And every one of these movements that I'm pressing left and right is getting recorded in the blockchain. I think if I had actually connected and logged in with my private key, because right now I didn't do that. Cool to see how fast the blockchain can keep up with a game like this. Okay, and the next game. Let us move on. So we have EOS Knights. And EOS Knights is a first mobile game that runs on the EOS blockchain. Here's a picture of what it looks like. Here's some of the art. Looks like a pretty cool game. It looks very well designed and the graphics look very nice. I haven't actually played this yet, but when you click on get it on Google Play, you can see some screenshots and I'll show you those. If you click on the App Store, you have to wait. And it says it'll be available in early August. It actually reminds me very much of Final Fantasy, the early, Nintendo Final Fantasy 1 through 3, where you battle, but beautiful graphics. And this will be on the actual iPhone and the Android phone. So it'll be easy for your everyday user to get access to this. And we actually have one user who has been playing it. Nick T300 says, I've been playing it, though there's some issues. For one, I've obtained rare items which have disappeared. I also get assertion failures where I can't equip an item that I have because it says I don't have it. The game looks promising. It's in beta, so I can see various errors that need ironing out. So obviously it's in beta, it'll be out in August, and they're working on it. But very cool, yet another game. Okay, and moving on, the next game. Wizards.one, born to fight, chosen to win, created to trade. Start the game. And so this is an interesting game. You have to sign in with Scatter to play, and I'll let you guys do that. But there's all these items, and there's a price for each item. I'm not sure what to make of this game. So, 0.02 EOS for this staff. Very simple graphics. If you click on count here, I noticed that, this is sold out. Someone paid 3.5 EOS for this little staff. And someone paid 1 EOS for these little boots. 1.7 for this. A cape for 0.3 EOS. So people are paying real money for these games, just like they do in other games like Fortnite, where you buy skins and things like that. Very cool. A lot of games are getting created on EOS. I'm starting to wonder if the first major use case of EOS is going to be gaming. I mean, Brendan Bloomer did come out of the gaming market, and he's very familiar with gaming. Okay, and moving on to the next game, we have FOMO.io. And this is another gambling type game. A very interesting game. I had to study this for a bit to learn all the rules, but basically it goes in 8-hour blocks, and you have various jackpots. You have a winner jackpot, a 10th jackpot, and a random jackpot. And they describe these below. And then you have the last 10 players who have bid on keys. And when you get a key, then it increases the price of the key for the next player, and so on. And also when you buy a key, it increases the time on the clock up to an 8-hour maximum. So it's kind of a time-based game, gambling and chicken again. And so when you go down, it says game rules. The game starts at a price of 0.05 EOS per day, and the price increases by 0.0001 EOS for every key sold. I was watching it. I think it increases by 0.0002 EOS for every key sold. And then rewards are paid out proportionally to the keys you own. The more keys you own, the more rewards you receive. And so, as I said, there's a 10th jackpot and a random jackpot. And here's an explanation. So the 10th jackpot is every 10th key buyer wins the jackpot and takes all the EOS in this 10th jackpot. And the random jackpot is a smart contract that generates a random number. And if you're the winner of that random calculation, you'll get the random jackpot. And then at the end of the entire game, when the timer runs out, you get the winner jackpot and you get all the EOS there. And this game is cool because it's all based on the blockchain, of course. And the way you play is you send funds to their account. And you can actually view it in real time by clicking on this on the EOS Block Explorer. This is the FOMO smart contract. And right now, wow, it has 168 EOS in it. I was looking at this yesterday and it had like 70. So it's gone up by 100 EOS. And you can see each player, like Water Chokers, has just sent them 0.2509 EOS. And then every time you send money, the smart contract sends you back a acknowledgement in the form of 0.0001 EOS. Again, I haven't looked at the actual code. I couldn't tell you if it works, if there's backdoors, how well it works, but it looks like a fun game and it's definitely being used. I mean, every couple of seconds, someone is sending money to this contract and there are active players. So don't FOMO, play FOMOLife.io. And last video, you'll recall I shared King of Thrones, another game. So I have just shared a total of 6 games in the past week. That's a lot of games. EOS, maybe it's the next gaming platform. All right, guys, and we're going to end off this video with a little coverage of Telos as EOS holders, something that we're all going to get for free when they launch the network in a month or two. And so there's been an update on this, and the subject, it's called inverse weighted voting. And it's an innovation and a development that Telos has created to basically stop a certain type of problem on the EOS blockchain. There are certain whales that have a lot of tokens, and you can vote for up to 30 block producers when you vote. And some of these whales will selectively pick out 1 or 2 block producers only with their whale tokens and only vote for those 2. Therefore, pushing them up and everyone else getting knocked down by the fact that they're not getting any votes. And so what this inverse weighted voting does is it inverts the weight of your vote based on how many you do. So if you only vote for 1 or 2 BPs, the importance of that vote is reduced and it's not as heavy, as opposed to if you voted for 25 to 30 block producers, then the value of all 30 of those votes is heavier than if you only voted for 1 or 2. So it's a type of incentivization of voting more, because that way you get more block producers. Instead of this whale selection process, it actually encourages more BPs to be included in the network. So I think that's a really, really intelligent system. It basically discourages manipulation. And I'm going to play a video for you from Doug from Telos Network, and he's going to share with you how this exactly works.
Hi, I'm Douglas from GoodBlock. People have been asking us, what is inverse weighted voting on Telos? Well, both EOS and Telos use delegated proof of stake. And that means that all the voters pick just a few nodes to operate the network. Those are called block producers. And they're who have all the actual executive power on the network. And that is actually why it's so fast. That's why you can get 50,000 transactions per second, because you don't have thousands and thousands of computers all around the world operating the network. You just have 21 really high quality computers working together to operate it very quickly. It's a big plus. There's one problem. Some people only vote for 1 or 2 block producers when they could vote for up to 30. And some people do it because they're not educated, they only know about 1 or 2. But there are also some who are affiliated with block producers, who have big wallets, and who are just trying to make sure that their own block producers on EOS are getting all the block rewards. That's a problem in delegated proof of stake. It's one of the Achilles heels of it. Telos has a really good solution for that, and that is called inverse weighted voting. What does that mean? It means that if you have just 1 or 2 votes out there, then they don't count for as much, because either you're trying to game the system or you haven't done your research and you need to educate yourself. If you have 25 to 30 because you are playing fair and because you have looked around to who are really the best block producers, then your votes count for more, right? That's inverse weighted voting. So this encourages full voting. It encourages people to get educated. It's a very good thing for the network system. It would work just as well on EOS. So we are offering EOS all the code. We feel they are our sister network. We've gotten so much from EOS. We've learned so much. We wanted to do well. And so this is something we will also offer. They may consider it. They may not consider it right away. They may want to see how well it works on Telos. We can learn from each other. This is why EOS and Telos are part of an ecosystem that works together and improves each other.
And I really like how he says that EOS and Telos are like brother and sister networks. You know, it's open source and EOS can have it and use it if they so choose. And I really like that big brother, big sister viewpoint that the Telos network is having here. They're very much not having a competitive, we're going to take you out kind of mindset. It's like, let's both survive well together. Let's both improve our networks together and collaborate and cooperate. So I think that EOS very much should look at this, and I hope they take it. And lastly, I wanted to share something I discovered. So as you know, I'm kind of on the alert for key recovery because I have a friend who lost some EOS on the main network due to losing their private key. And I wondered, how is this going to work on the Telos network? Because it's the same situation. Since it's based on that Genesis snapshot, you know, am I going to have to go through a whole nother procedure to help them out on that network as well? And I asked this in the Telos testnet Telegram group, and I got an answer. And it looks good, actually. It looks really good. Basically, there's a couple of ways that you could not have access to your Telos tokens, the same ways that you wouldn't be able to on the EOS network when it first launched. For example, if you didn't register, you'd have to use a fallback method. If you did register but you lost your private key, you'd have to prove your ownership with the Ethereum key. And that's a feature that's not been implemented on EOS because the network's already live. But the good news is that on Telos, because the network is not yet live, they're able to implement solutions for all these circumstances in advance. And so Douglas Horn, he seems to be of the leadership role on the Telos network, says, it's going to be important that people do this before the network activates, because once it does, we won't be able to help people. We have a one-time window of opportunity here because we can fix things before they are live. Personally, I'm not here to launch a new network just so people can get robbed twice. We will aid everyone we can who can provide cryptographic proof. We have a process already in the white paper. We will expand on this soon so we can maximize exposure for people. So I'm also sharing this to get the word out that there is a method. You do have to take some steps, but there is a method for recovering your Telos tokens before the network goes live. And so you have to do whatever those steps are. So let's take a look at the white paper. This is page 31 and page 32 of the newest Telos white paper. This section's called Telos Stolen Fund Repatriation Process, which is basically getting funds back to the rightful owner. In some cases during the EOS ICO and registration process, some addresses were incorrectly registered, left unregistered, or falsely registered in scams. The Telos appointed block producers intend to correct the situation to the extent possible before the network launch and provide Telos tokens to those who should rightfully have them. To accomplish this, The appointed block producers will seek to credit those who can prove, using cryptographic keys, that they are the true owners of lost or stolen tokens. This includes EOS tokens that were not originally registered prior to the snapshot. And it says the Telos appointed block producers intend to repatriate tokens that can be cryptographically proven to have been unregistered or stolen at the Ethereum registration or EOS voting stages, under the rationale that this correction is possible and verifiable before the Telos network launches. This does not set a precedent for repatriation of lost tokens, and that's emphasized. Telos token holders should never again expect block producers to take action to freeze or repatriate lost or stolen funds. The Telos Arbitration Organization does not accept cases of stolen funds for arbitration, as that is not its function. So they're making it very clear here that it's sort of a code is law viewpoint. They'll only make this good prior to the network launch. And after that fact, they're not going to reverse your transactions. If you get scammed or if you lost your tokens or you lost your private key, that's not the function of the arbitration. And I think that's smart. And I think that they learned from EOS's mistakes on this, on the ECAF, on all the blacklisting, that they're not going to get involved with that. And so it says the intent of the Telos appointed block producers is that the network will not become involved in cases of theft or swindling unless caused by a bug or exploit in the EOS.io software. And again, that's mirroring the EOS approach now in the soon to be Constitution version 2.0, where the kind of things that the arbitration can make good is where you have the intent of the code a certain way, and maybe someone lost money, like the DAO on Ethereum. That wasn't the intent that everyone's money could get stolen. And so in situations like that, where it's a code error, then arbitration can step in and make funds right for users. But that's the only time that they're going to do it. So it's really an intent code is law type of situation. Okay, guys, and that's all I have for you today. I hope you're having a great rest of a weekend and a fantastic day, and I'll talk to you again soon. Take care.